Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Lark from Wellington here. Today we're going to be doing our Bitcoin news roundup where I give you all the latest, hottest news from the Bitcoin verse. And of course, do make sure you stick around until the end of this video to find out how to be in for next week's giveaway. Now, before we get into all that fun stuff, just a quick shout out to everyone who has been hitting that like button. Of course, a massive thank you to all the subscribers. That's a big shout out to the new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. That is a massive, massive thank you to the old subscribers. Thank you for sticking with the channel. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, button's just down there. Go ahead and hit it up to stay up to date with all the latest in the cryptoverse. And of course, this is not professional financial advice, guys. Just a dude talking about cryptocurrencies on the internet. Let's get into it. Bitcoin, $8,290.15. Wowzers! $138 billion market cap. New all-time highs seem to be reached on a weekly basis in Bitcoin land. It's an amazing place to be, and I'm glad that you are all here with me to share this crazy adventure. As far as the markets go, Bitfinex with Bitcoin US dollar pairings still at number 1, unsurprising there. BitThumb Korean won pairings for Bitcoin in at number 2 with 5.76% of the volume. The real interesting news here is that Power Ledger comes in at number 4, $138.486 million in the last 24 hours for the Power Ledger volume. Moving on to our first story over in Russia. Russian minister says we will never consider Bitcoin legal. Now this, of course, is a continuation of the back and forths that we are seeing in Russia as there are pro and anti-Bitcoin factions within the Russian government vying for control. However, there is a draft bill with details have been released of some of those, looking at taxing Bitcoin miners and, more importantly, keeping Bitcoin trading only to qualified investors bought and sold on licensed sites. Bad news for the regular Russian. Of course, they will still be able to get around these barriers, but there are barriers nevertheless being put in place by the central government. Over in Ukraine, top lawmaker wants to exempt crypto income and profits from taxation. Nice one, Ukraine. Keep in it classy. That is fantastic. Of course, coming just on the back of the news out of Russia. Seems whatever Russia is doing, Ukraine is doing the opposite. It would be, of course, fantastic to see Ukraine become a leader in the space of cryptocurrencies. They certainly could. Over in Korea, major ATM manufacturer integrates Bitcoin, exposing millions of users. This, of course, is absolutely fantastic. This lets you not only buy, but also sell Bitcoin to the ATM. The more, the merrier. When people start going to an ATM and see Bitcoin on there as a regular thing, that's going to be big. That's going to be very powerful. Coinbase is hoping to lure serious investors with the $10 million minimum deposit. They're looking at enterprise level investments. That, of course, is a great thing for Coinbase and probably a good thing if you're already holding Bitcoin, as these institutional buyers do start to come in, and they're coming. Prices will continue to rise. Square is a payments company, in case you don't know who Square are. Square is integrating Bitcoin into their payment services. This is going to be really big for Bitcoin, and of course really big for Square as well. I'm glad they saw the potential and recognized the opportunity here. Over to some more naysayers. World's biggest wealth manager won't touch Bitcoin. Missing out, buddy. You are missing out. Commodity King Gartman says that Bitcoin is for criminals and millennials. They say miscreants here. He said criminals. Criminals and millennials. Cool. I'm so happy to know that I, as a millennial, am then put into the same basket as criminals. this slander campaign by traditional bankers and central bankers and government heads is ridiculous. The sooner it stops, the better, but they'll keep going right up until Bitcoin's $1 million. They'll still be saying it's a bubble and it's a scam and it's only used for criminals, as everyone's walking around them buying burgers and sodas and iPhones with Bitcoin. They'll be going, oh, it's a scam, they're all criminals, everyone around me is a criminal. Silly guys. In New Zealand! Someone talked about New Zealand! Over in New Zealand, small town of Blenheim, New Zealand, there is an arcade where they are accepting Bitcoin. I'm highly hesitant to think that this is a good way to spend your Bitcoin, blowing it all in an arcade. But if you're so inclined and you happen to find yourself in Blenheim, New Zealand, off you go. Off you go. Of course, there are many more interesting things to buy with your Bitcoin. We have been talking a lot on this program about the really big things that you can buy with Bitcoin, whether that be, for example, a palace in Spain, a super yacht, a house, rare art, any of these different things, all buyable with Bitcoin. Or if you even want to get yourself a Lamborghini, that is truly possible. Peter Sandington is mentioned actually in this CNBC article. Of course, he has recently actually bought himself a Lamborghini using Bitcoin. Pretty fantastic stuff. And he says, I have no regrets. I know, yes, some point in the future that Bitcoin will be worth more money, but you got to enjoy your profits at some points. And he, of course, has been in it for a long time. So well done, Peter, enjoying a bit of those profits. Over in Japan, 88% of Japanese people have heard of Bitcoin. Now, that's not the interesting thing. Although I do wonder, where are those 12% of people living, especially in Japan? In tiny villages in the middle of nowhere or under rocks and caves, who knows? That being said, the more interesting statistic here, 47% of people asked said that they have used Bitcoin in retail stores. Now that goes against all the arguments that no one's buying anything with Bitcoin. People are buying stuff with Bitcoin. You gotta keep that real. If you bought Bitcoin last week and you think, wow, I've got a free $1,000 basically, you're gonna go buy some Bitcoin. Go buy yourself an iPod. Do people buy iPods still? Go buy yourself an iPhone. Some of that stuff. Have fun. Enjoy the profits once in a while. Although, you know, the majority respondents said, no, long-term investment, we're hodling. Bit of both, but don't be afraid to take a little bit of profit once in a while, guys. Bitcoin is now processing $2 billion a day worth of transactions. 10 times increase on 2017. Now, of course, one thing that we would really like to see rolled out with Bitcoin is for more players to actually integrate SegWit. We have SegWit. This is the SegWit Bitcoin now. It's just not being used by very many providers at this point. There are some, so a Bitcoin SegWit address will start with a 3, not with a 1. Some are using it, not many. About only 10% of addresses are SegWit addresses at this point. And so I'm talking about companies like Exodus. Come on, guys. SegWit, integrate it. Let's do it. Anytime now. We're waiting. Of course, now that all the drama is over with SegWit 2x, I think these companies can actually get down to focusing on doing this. So it'll be really nice to see that rolling out in the near future. India's Bitcoin scene is thriving despite a cold shoulder from the central bank. Now, the statistics that I found here were quite interesting, actually. 1.5 million Bitcoin users in India right now. 200,000 a month are being added to that number. You may say, well, Lark, that is a tiny number for a country with a population as vast as India's. Well, yes, perhaps, but 200,000 a month, guys. And that number is only going to grow exponentially as more and more Indians find out about Bitcoin. Be really curious to talk to anyone out there in Bitcoin land from India to let me know what the Bitcoin scene is like as you see it from the ground. Hit me up in the comment section down below. Over in Hong Kong. Now this is some worrying news. Hong Kong-based banks are shunning Bitcoin. I can only imagine that this is as a direct result of influence from Beijing. We have seen this pressure be put on banks around Southeast Asia. Singapore banks started cutting off Bitcoin-related businesses, for example. We've seen a lot of pressure being put on Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, now Hong Kong. And this is worrying because Hong Kong has always been able to stay its own path. And if this is what's happening, if this is actually a central government directive that's putting this pressure on in the background saying, hey, you got to cut out that Bitcoin stuff over there in Hong Kong, guys, that's worrying. And of course, the people of Hong Kong have always been quite worried about the influence coming from Beijing, so this would not be a positive sign if that were the case. China's Bitcoin miners eye overseas move. I don't know why JP Morgan's here, but the most important thing that this article has to talk about is that Bitcoin miners in China are actually looking at moving to perhaps friendlier jurisdictions. So they're looking at expanding operations into, for example, into Laos, although Laos would of course be a country that would be highly susceptible to Chinese government influence. It already is susceptible to Chinese government influence. But perhaps if they move to Russia, for example, they would have a better time of it. Russia has found the best location for crypto miners, by the way, and it's not Irkutsk, although it has become a hub for Bitcoin mining in Russia. No, it is the town of Krasnoyarsk. Woo, Krasnoyarsk. They are well suited in the middle ground between, of course, Europe and China, and have fantastically cheap power, although Irkutsk does have slightly cheaper power than Krasnoyarsk. But let's not forget about our buddies up in Canada who also have very cheap hydroelectric, only marginally more expensive than the Russians. And of course, Canada being a very friendly, reliable jurisdiction makes an attractive location to bring in your mining operation. And obviously not just the hydropower, but the fact that northern Quebec's pretty cold, guys. You got to keep that real, especially in the winter. Even in the summer, it tends to be cooler than a lot of places. That brings your heating costs way down because Bitcoin mining machines use a lot of energy and produce a lot of heat. Now, if you do want to get involved in some Bitcoin mining, currently Hashflare has still got the cheapest terahash going. Now, Hashflare did a bad business basically when they changed the terms of their contracts from lifetime to 1-year contracts. They're currently 1-year contracts though. Even on that 1-year contract at $150 a terahash, the profitability is very, very high. You can be looking at a 10 terahash, so for $1,500, potential profits of about $3,600. Now that Bitcoin amount mined, 0.67 Bitcoin, this is accounting for the fees and all these things that will go down over time. You got to keep that in mind as the difficulty does increase, but this is more Bitcoin than you would be able to buy for your money at current prices. So you'll definitely win in the dollar value, and you will likely end up with more Bitcoin at the end, although I say likely because the Bitcoin mining game is getting pretty crazy, and a 1-year contract is certainly a little more speculative. Now, Bitcoin.com, highly reliable player, $300 a terahash. Very big difference, although the fees are slightly lower over on Bitcoin.com. They do from time to time have lifetime plans available, but at $300 a terahash for a 1-year contract, Hashflare looks pretty gosh darn tempting. Via BTC is currently sold out, as so many other players in the market are, of their cloud mining contracts. They had a pre-sale that sold out quite quickly. Definitely one to keep an eye on for the future if they can keep them down at $200 a terahash. Is a pretty good price. And of course, they do offer Bitcoin Cash mining over here on Via BTC as well. Hashing 24 has been sold out for quite some time. That is their 36-month plan, and their pre-sale have both been sold out for a while, although I would expect them to be bringing in more hashing power soon if you want to keep an eye out for that, although some of the highest prices in the industry over at Hashing24. Genesis Mining, of course, has just had their pre-sale, not being deployed until the end of February, although the cheapest Bitcoin mining in the game at $179 with an open-ended contract, which is a big difference because that can definitely run for a much longer time, especially as the price of Bitcoin continues to increase and your daily fees are calculated in Bitcoin but paid in dollars. Other way around. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't know about this cloud mining stuff, Lark, I would like to just do some home mining. Best of luck trying to get your hands on a home miner at this point. Bitmain has been having sales, but they are continually sold out. And when they do have them available, they sell out incredibly quickly. But if you want to keep an eye out for getting some of your own home miners, I would suggest to follow Bitmain on Twitter and set up notifications for when sales happen. That's one of the best ways to keep an eye out for actually getting into those sales. Now it is time to give away some Bitcoin. $50 given away every week during this video. Let's see who the winner for last week's draw will be. Jamie Larkin, great news roundup, roll on 2018. Jamie Larkin, like the last name by the way, you got $50 in Bitcoin coming your way. Now, if you want to be in to win Bitcoin next week, $50, don't just put your address down below. Put your address. But we're not going to be doing a random winner next week. I'm going to be doing it based on the best joke. Your joke could be something like this. What is the difference between Bitcoin and NASA? Bitcoin is going to the moon. NASA's not. Anyway, put your joke down below in the comment section with your Bitcoin address and you'll be in to win for next week's draw. Thank you so much for tuning into this Bitcoin news roundup. Long live the blockchain and peace out till next time.